A few weeks ago, we started talking about some exciting development opportunities here in the city of Niagara Falls. And one of the things that I started talking about is the need for the city to strongly consider creating an event space, to develop an event center, not something that competes with the larger venues that are in Western New York, but something right-sized for the city of Niagara Falls. We have often shared conversations with other individuals in the hospitality industry, hotel owners, and other businesses down in our tourist core about how we get ourselves from being a seasonal industry into something that expands into the winter months. Now I realize that in many ways, some of the participants here, some of the folks who've come today, sort of like preaching to the choir. But one of the reasons why I wanted to make sure that you understood the position that this administration is taking is that I think that it is more than just a government push. I think that what needs to happen, and they're represented in this room today, I think business, our higher education facilities, institutions, and labor need to all begin to raise their voices that this is an important aspect of creating a new and more vibrant Niagara Falls. You know, the funny thing is that this isn't old news. In 2014, when the current group, in fact, the current group that's been asked to research locations for the Buffalo Bills, a group called, I think is it Acon. So, and one of the locations that they indicated, it didn't make the short list, and I'll tell you why, but was Niagara Falls. And they spoke about the construction in and around the John Daly Boulevard area. They talked about the fact that we already had the tourism traffic, we already had the close proximity to Southern Ontario. This would simply be an addition to the market that already existed here. The reason why it didn't make the short list had more to do with infrastructure, roads, the capacity to move people in and out in that type of space. It wasn't because Niagara Falls wasn't an attractive place, and it wasn't because Niagara Falls made no sense. As a matter of fact, the authors of that report in 2014 said, if you can fix those road issues, Niagara Falls is the place. That's where it should be, because it opens up markets that right now it's more difficult in terms of where the current Bills Stadium is located. In 2017, a Minneapolis firm taking a look at Niagara Falls and examining what could be done, this is 2017, thinking about what could be done to increase the experience here in Niagara Falls, said, you know, once we start developing other hotels, once we start developing other items, venues downtown, like we're talking about with the current Rainbow Center adaptive use, then about 6 years out, this is 2017, 6 years out, then you can really start talking about the creation of an event center. It makes sense. Well, what's happened since 2017? Three additional hotels have been built. We have a plan that was rolled out the other day by USA Niagara in partnership with the city of Niagara Falls for reimagining the Rainbow Center. Now, I understand that the 2017 report said in 6 years, but that doesn't mean that we have to wait 6 years and then start talking about it. They knew then that it made sense that the city of Niagara Falls has an event center, something that could attract those types of events that will make the stay and the experience in downtown Niagara Falls even more exciting than it currently is with our famous falls. Most recently, the Buffalo News. And I'll say this, the Buffalo News doesn't always have nice things to say about Niagara Falls. And the Buffalo News doesn't always go out of its way to say, geez, you know, the new mayor's a great guy and he's got great ideas and you know what, we really like him. But they put an editorial out that said, you want to know something? He's right. The city of Niagara Falls has to start thinking about those kinds of venues that flip the switch, that change the narrative in downtown. And so I suppose of all the entities that I was most surprised to get, you know, an attaboy from, was the Buffalo News. Armed with all of that, and knowing that we have something that no one else really in Western New York can talk about. We have the falls, we have people who come here, we know that they're attracted to us. We know that we continue to be the draw for Western New York. We know that we are, even though some others may not think that. We know we are. At the end of the day, I started having conversations, and they were just development ideas. It started out with a conversation that I had between the city administrator and our community development director, Cliff Scott, about what do we do? Like, how do we really start supersizing our tourists and even locals to be attracted downtown? And we kept on coming back to the same thing. We needed a venue. We needed a place that was going to be able to attract the kinds of events that bring people downtown and make for an exciting nightlife. With that in mind, and obviously I love sports. I really love sports. So the idea of talking about hockey and basketball. I had my first MMA experience this past weekend. I don't recommend it for everyone, but if you can get through what you see initially, it's engaging. But in order to have those kinds of events that make for, again, an exciting nightlife, the kind of thing that could be pre and post game, as well as what we all remember, those of us who have been here our whole lives, we remember the convention center and the concerts and the other events that were in that space. So how do we get back to that? I'm not a big fan, by the way, of walking down Main Street and saying, oh, we have to go back to the way Main Street was, or walking into the Rainbow Mall and saying we have to go back to the way the Rainbow Mall was. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about going backwards, because I think that this event center really is forward thinking. Because what I thought about, and with the help of the folks at CJS, what we ended up coming up with was an entire campus. It was an entire park that would not only have this event center in it, but so much more. Something that would engage residents and tourists. And I have continued to drive home the idea that unless and until we get the residents of the city of Niagara Falls to really believe that downtown is their space, we're going to continue to struggle. So the folks that live on Garden Avenue or Griffin, they have to be able to come downtown and say, you know what, that's our space. So how do we do that? How do we engage them? And by the way, after the tourists go home, maybe it's mid-October, maybe it's early November, when they go home, the same people who were here in the middle of the tourist high season are still here. And so we need to make sure that we're engaging them to continue to have downtown be exciting. Traffic. You know, a couple of hotel friends and folks that I know have talked about how it's been difficult for them to get restaurants to link into their hotels because of the limited season. Now imagine for a moment you have an event center that provides, whether they are sporting events or other events, concerts, whatever it may be. Now all of a sudden, all 12 months can be engaged. That business that's looking for a place to start has traffic, and we all know, those of you that are in business understand that the one thing that drives the need for a business to be planted in a particular location is traffic. Do you have foot traffic? Do you have people? Do they come? And if they come down there, will they have choices? And so with that, we can create that kind of environment. I've had many conversations as well with what I believe to be one of the principal partners that will ultimately have to come to the table with us for this, and that's the Seneca Nation. In fact, it was at our casino where I had my first MMA experience, and during that, I was having a conversation about the need for a larger space, a space that would make the type of event we were watching and others more magnificent. This all becomes just another public official ranting and railing over wanting to have a public venue or a public-private partnership venue built in his or her hometown. And that's why you're all critical. Because this doesn't go anywhere if you don't recognize the importance of it and then speak up with me about it. You know, as an elected official, I can assure you that if the only person who is telling me that I need to do something is, and I mean this respectfully, are the members of the city council, I listen, but okay, they deal with the same things I deal with. Let's change that. All of a sudden I'm hearing it from community members, from block clubs, from business owners. These are the constituents that we represent. These are the people who we look to for support. And so you have power, right? Your power is in your ability to say, we think this makes sense, and we think you should think this makes sense. So who am I talking to when I say that? Not me. I mean, obviously, you don't have to convince me. I'm here telling you. All of these investments, any investment like the one you're going to see, is going to require help from government entities above local government. Whether it is our friends at the county, and I welcome them here today, or it's our friends at the state level, they're going to have to invest in Niagara Falls. They're going to have to realize that investing in the state park is good. Our state park is second to none. But the city of Niagara Falls is more than the state park. And the state park benefits more when the city of Niagara Falls completely is developing. Their assistance is needed for that second piece, beyond just the state park. They have to invest in the city of Niagara Falls. Now, they may say, you may hear, well, they are investing in Niagara Falls. They've purchased the lots downtown. They're working with the city on the reuse of the Rainbow Center, and all of that is true. All of that is true. But we all recognize that one of the things that is going to be required is to change the dynamic from seasonal attraction to year-long attraction. And the only way to do that is to invest in these types of projects. These projects, like the one you will see, these projects change the dynamic for the city of Niagara Falls. And by the way, when you see what this is, and when you start to visualize what our friends at CJS have put together, and you think about the conversation now that we're having about, convention space in the city of Buffalo, a new stadium for the Buffalo Bills, quite frankly, the type of investment that would be required from the state for Niagara Falls, for this project, it's fractional compared to the type of investment that has either already occurred in the city of Buffalo to enliven their nightlife, and what will be required for the projects that are on the drawing board for them. We benefit from a lot of things here in the city of Niagara Falls. We benefit from the fact that we have great institutional partners in Niagara University and Community College. We think that we've developed a much better relationship with our friends in county government and specifically in the Economic Development Department. So from an institutional and governmental perspective, I think we're all singing out of the same songbook. But what I need more than anything else is I need the members of the business community, and I know there aren't many of you here, but I hope you take away from this conversation a need to go back to your fellow business associates and compel them to pick up the ball and run with it. I'm not asking you to do it alone. Don't misunderstand me. As a matter of fact, all I'm saying is just stand shoulder to shoulder with me. I'm not even telling you to be the point of the spear. Stand with me in saying to our representatives, specifically our state government, they need to invest in Niagara Falls in a big way. The city. They need to help this development project get off the ground. Now I'm going to let, we've got Robert Stark and Antonio Borghese here from CJS. I can't thank them enough for the kind of work that they did. They took what was really kind of like fractured thoughts and ideas, and all I did was sit down with them and start talking about things, just sort of almost rambling. And they came up with this thing. And I can't wait for you to see it, because when I saw it, it was absolutely incredible. I hope you'll think that as well. And so I'm going to turn it over to them, because they're far better at describing this than I could ever do. And I want to thank you all again.
Well, do you want to go through the desired outcomes first?
You go right ahead and point, start pointing out what this project is, and then we'll talk about all of that stuff.
So, should we go right to the design part?
Yep.
Okay. I'm Bob Stark from CJS Architects. We're really pleased to be here. We went in the process with the mayor and his staff a number of months back, where he began talking about an event center. We're calling it a campus. A place for major events, to attract all kinds of events, whether they're sporting events or school things, or try to have a tremendously multifaceted campus that can do all kinds of things. So it will be a resource for the whole region besides just an event center. So we looked at a bunch of sites, and we realized that there aren't a lot of large sites around. So the site that you're looking at now is directly across on John Daly Boulevard, directly across from the casino, which is a great gateway. It's not necessarily the be-all and end-all site where this project could go. It just happened to have enough real estate that when we started talking about all these different ideas that we wanted to accomplish, they could be accomplished on this site. So with that, we started to develop some program elements and place them on the site to basically accommodate all of these fun activities that we thought should happen here. So we put a presentation together here, and I'm going to turn this over to Tony Borghese to talk about the individual program pieces and how they fit together on the site.
The site a little bit. So this idea of an event center that could house many different types of program functions. We also started talking about the idea of an indoor ice rink, which again could also serve as a different function. I'll run through some of that also, but that can also become sort of a community type of amenity, so that it's not just meant for large performances or events, but it can also be something that the local community, the neighborhood, can come to on a regular basis. So we're saying that if people come into the city of Niagara Falls, again, there's this large building that can act as sort of an iconic presence that really marks the gateway, as a gateway to the city. If you bring a lot of people into the site or into the city, there's a great opportunity here to have them park here, right? So another main element to the site plan is a parking garage. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. It's maybe going to be serving double duty, not just as a parking garage. But if you bring cars here, people can either stay on the site, enjoy the activities that are available on the site, or from here, they can actually walk into the city, walk to the park, walk to the fall. And then the two other main elements that you see on the site plan, just to the south of the parking garage, is perhaps a landform, something like call it a water park or a splash park, and maybe a landform that comes over top of it. And then finally, this particular site actually has a lot of trees on it, right? So there's a very natural type of setting that we think relates very nicely to the idea, again, of Niagara Falls, the state park, and also a lot of work that's going to be proposed and has been done along Niagara Street and John Daly Boulevard, where we really want to create more of a park-like setting as people move through the city, right? So we just feel that this is sort of a nice sort of terminus or another connection point along that theme. So just these particular slides are just aerial views of the park, of this campus, and just to give you a sense of the magnitude and the scale of all these buildings. But ultimately, you can see this an event center, a parking structure, a nice rink. All of those fit quite nicely into the site, but if you notice that it's only maybe covering about 40 or 50% of the site. So again, a lot of that is still given over to outdoor space. The outside of the building, the park setting, the outdoor space is just as important as the potential activities that could take place within those buildings. So if you can envision, say, spring, summer months, the idea of having people that live in the neighborhood or that just live anywhere in the city just want to come to this sort of central place, we can start finding opportunities where they can do sunbathing or lounging outside. So again, if there's a landform that kind of hovers over a splash pad, that people can go there and just lounge, walk around the site. Even the rooftops of these structures, or portions of it, can actually become available for public use for any type of, that type of activity. Right. Other types of activities that can take place on site, you know, we talk about that wooded area, and we've seen this, and we'll show some precedents in a little bit, but the idea of adventure courses or road courses taking place very naturally that can happen within that wooded area, or just even sort of simple walking through that wooded area. Rooftop courts, whether it's basketball or tennis, again, just sort of trying to think of outside the box, how do you make the buildings do more than just one thing? Also the idea of the parking structure, right? Typically parking structures, they're just large structures that certainly serve a great function of parking cars, but we're also envisioning the opportunity to enliven that structure. Maybe there's things like climbing walls or an adventure course that actually happens on the side of the parking structure as well. So you can start envisioning that all this activity or all these activities can happen, or at one time, or they can happen all together. So that type of space, the type of activity and vibrancy that can occur becomes very evident. You go to the next one. And then finally, things like having rooftop movies, right? Nighttime, so that this space isn't just for the daytime, right? These outdoor spaces aren't just for the daytime, but something that can be used at night or in the evenings as well. And again, multifunctional kinds of things. You can even have concerts outdoors or presentations outdoors or any type of performance outdoors. Again, either on the ground or maybe even occupying some of the rooftop elements. Next one. So, and then wintertime, right? So we're talking about a 12-month, a year-round facility, park. So when we start looking at the site and the outside of it, again, using these landforms or the rooftops of the buildings as opportunities for sledding, right? That's something that we can certainly do and take advantage of. Bob's going to take you through some of these precedents that we reviewed, but again, as you look through these images, I think you start envisioning or thinking about or imagining how these things translate very easily to some of the functions that we just described.
Again, to get families and children here is something that's sorely needed in Niagara Falls, besides for just the sightseeing, but actual activity. It'd be a lot of fun in the summertime, activate the site. In the wintertime, you could have all kinds of ice skating and festivals out there. They could even be public markets and things like that, because there's, with this landform that we're talking about, there is shelter and things, or you could just have lectures, presentations, concerts. So we were trying to envision shapes and forms that would be flexible for all kinds of activities, and I'm sure there are probably a lot more that we haven't even imagined.
And through this plan, you create a couple of things. You create a 12-month destination. What that does is it improves the hospitality industry. Employment becomes full-year employment. You create a better environment for businesses to grow in the downtown core. And with all of that, you improve the image of the city of Niagara Falls and advance even farther its reputation as a world-class destination. All of these things aren't things that I just woke up one morning and thought of myself. Some very smart people, through an initiative from Niagara University at the Global Tourism Institute, put together a report. That report came out a few weeks ago. In that report, these are the kinds of things that they talk about. In fact, at one point, it specifically talks about the need for an expanded event and conference center. So, if we all know, and I trust that you walk away from here agreeing with us that it's important.